Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Sideline Eye podcast. This is part one of our review show for the Senior Championship playoffs and the Junior Championship quarterfinals. I'm joined once again by Johnny Murtagh for part one, and we're online here. But for part two, we'll both be in the Box Athletic Grounds just after commentating on Madden and the Harps, and we'll be able to give a roundup of all Sunday's games. We're going to focus on Saturdays here to begin the podcast, and we'll start with the Senior Championship, and we'll start with St. Peter's and Cullaville. And Johnny, St. Peter's were 7 down just before half time. They weren't playing well, they would admit that themselves. Everything seemed to be pointing to a Cullaville victory here, and St. Peter's turned it around. A really strong performance in the second half. A black card just before half time for Cullaville didn't help their cause. They were down to 14 men for the first, say, 8 minutes of the second period, and St. Peter's really come back into it. And it's probably a result. I know Mark Beattie tipped St. Peter's during the week, but it's probably a result not too many seen coming.
Yeah, well, to be fair to Mark, he might be fit to show his face around Lurgan if he didn't tip them. So I think we'll give him that one all right. Probably because the way Cullaville was going, Sean, and the a couple of massive scalps they had and different things, and a couple of big performances by them all year. They probably would have been going in here as good favourites. And look at they've got turned over. The black card was massive because at the start of the second half, the Peters I think reeled off maybe 5 or 6 scores in a row. And that seemed to be the difference as the game sort of kicked on. McConville was everywhere on the field. He was immense. He was a top scorer for the Peters. Gave a massive performance, a man of the match performance. Cullaville had chances, didn't stick them. They're a good fray of scores again. Like Big Kingham got a few points. Fergal Kieran, I think, probably top scored for maybe 4 or 5 points. And they've been consistent in that department. But Duffy got the goal. Ashton O'Neill, the young fella, got a goal there as well. And Cullaville probably got their tails up at certain stages and had chances. But the Peters stuck to their guns and they reeled this one out. And it's probably a trend we've probably seen as we chat about the rest of the games, that for the weather conditions and slippy pitches and a right bit of rain we've had, Sean, the scores now have dramatically dropped down. And Cullaville would have thought to themselves, getting 2 goals, they would have put themselves in a massive position. But in fairness to the Peters, McGribbon got a goal of his own. I think he reeled off 1-1, and like Rory McDonald got 3 points as well. So they had a good spread of scores as well, and a couple of other guys popped in on it. But 114 to like 17-16 to 210. It's well back from what we've seen in the group stages, Sean. We had a wee bit more open. We see. I wonder if this is a trend and is a conversation that we'll probably have down the tracks, but especially when we see what happens later on. But I wonder, is this a trend as we approach now the knockout stuff, that maybe the scores are maybe going to become more of a premium?
Yeah, that's a good point, Johnny. But you also mentioned at the start the weather conditions. Like we're out of summer now. It's September. I suppose the heavy rain all weekend. I know your game against Middletown was postponed. It's on Thursday night now, so like it's having a massive impact. And we're seeing throughout the group stages the impact the wind was having, and even last week, in terms of the 2 pointers and stuff. But the rain, it's a leveler, I suppose, but it's ruining the games too, probably to a degree.
Yeah, look at 100%. See, some of the fields, you have the old traditional field. They would probably take a bit of rain and more of a heavy sod and soak it up a wee bit, and they get a wee bit slippy on the foot, you know. And then now you have this some of the sand-based pitches that's really been rock hard for the great summer that we had, and the water is now sitting on them. So like it's extremely slippy and treacherous conditions. And that was basically where Katie was. Katie's a good surface and everything else. There's no problem, but there's just awful showers of rain, torrential rain for the couple of hours leading up. Probably it stopped about 5 in the morning after raining all night. Lovely morning, brilliant. I thought it was drying up nice, and then next thing ferocious for an hour period, and then the field like it was treacherous, and I suppose after all the injuries we've seen over the last number of weeks, very unlucky. I feel them were extremely unlucky, and not really down to pitches now, it has to be said, but I think it was probably the right decision. When we seen some of the carnage that's happened, it's just been one of them years. It's just been a tad unlucky, and unfortunately, you could go 10 years without seeing anything like this in championship. But I think it was the right decision.
And then just before we move on, you're talking about the rain, Johnny. I know we were soaked in Claddagh yesterday. It did eventually clear up and it turned into a nice day, but we were drowned in the beforehand. Just before we move on, you mentioned Niall McConville and the impact he had, and that he covered every blade of grass in the field. We're probably used to Niall McConville being the main man for St Peters in terms of putting up the big scores, but it was his work rate. He come out around the middle of the field, the half back line, even in the full back line, winning balls yesterday. Like, talk about leadership and whatever else, Johnny. It's okay to be popping the ball over the bar, but when you have somebody like that of his experience and quality coming back and doing the dirty work too, it's a big motivating factor and a big inspiration to everybody around him.
Oh, it's a massive lift for the team. As you said there, it's okay being the stalwart up in the forward line, kicking nice scores, but whenever you see him getting down and dirty and doing the donkey work, being all over the field. And one thing anybody knows from playing Cullerville, it's not a soft game. You're not going to get anything soft there. You're going to be hit fair, you're going to be hit hard, and you're going to have to be nimble on your feet, and you're going to have to get yourself about and dish it out sometimes when it's needed as well. And McConville's got all them attributes. He's just that real bit of class about him, and at this minute in time, I'd say his performance is up there with probably going to be the performance of the week, and not unless we see something else today. But that was the sort of performance, a match-winning knockout senior championship performance, and he got them over the line. And I wouldn't just say single-handedly, but he went a long way to it. And if you didn't have him, Sean, I tell you, it'd be an absolute nightmare. So a massive performance, and probably this minute in time, my player of the week.
And we'll move on to the Cruppen and Graham result then, Johnny, because this was Saturday evening. Now, I was in Camla watching O'Hanlon's and Thomas Davis, so I didn't actually see this game, but obviously the clips provided by Armagh TV on Twitter and that, and a bit of information from Kieran Lynch, who was commentating on the game too. So the red card had a major impact here. Johnny Graham were on top, and they lost their goalkeeper. PJ Quinn got a straight red card. So that sort of turned the momentum in Cruppen's favour, and a few scores. Owen Woods, a couple of frees. Blaine Hughes got two pointers from frees as well. So that sort of helped turn the tide into their favour.
Yeah, and Blaine has that in his locker. Like, I seen different comments last night, about the him and Rafferty thing, the way Rafferty's kicking them for fun, and Blaine showed yesterday as well, two massive 2-pointers, an unbelievable 2-pointer when it was badly needed, off the ground outside the 45, dead straight in front of the goals. Yesterday was absolute, clinker, straight as a gunshot. But Woods has been very consistent. He was immense last year in the intermediate championship, and he's been immense again. He's a serious player, a serious operator. He's a guy that can play. He can play any position. You can put him in midfield. You can put him in centre half forward. He loves that position. Put him in the full forward as well. He can put himself about. He has good feet. He knows where the post is. Very, very consistent. So it's Tara that the two senior games have come down to big decisions, and big decisions made on either a black card or red card, and this one was massive. Like, we've seen the top scorer for Graham Owen O'Neill actually winning the goals. Like a crazy decision. And like I seen them again crossing the group stages, and he was the top scorer for them that night. Now, maybe he picked up a bit of a niggle or whatever, and they need to move things around. but he still got another 2-pointer from he was in the goals as well. So, you know what, he top scored for them with 6 points. But I think that the red card was massive. Like McQuaid has been consistent with his 2-pointers coming up from full back, or he can play centre half back either. Very, very effective. And he's hit a few of them all year. He's known and he done the same again yesterday. But listen, when you have Woods and Blaine, and once them two guys are on song, they're going to do most of the damage for you. They're gonna hit 90% or damn near. So, but look, it's another game that we spoke about there in the previous with Cullaville. Like, this game was only 13-10. You know, 110-10. Like, I will say this for Cruppen, I think they're dangerous. They're a real dangerous team in this championship, and a lot of teams probably after the first round against Clonairon, and they took a bit of a lesson. You know, didn't give them much credit, but I think it's fair to say, Sean, look, they got the job done again. A team that's defensive enough in Graham Moore. For me, Graham Moore's missing another forward or two, and you know, there's a couple of players that stepped away and players not available. You know, like O'Neill's brother would have been Jason, would have been a key man in there. You know, even just to have him in the full forward line, if you'd Owen at 11 and him at 14, makes a lot of difference and takes a lot of pressure off your scoring power. You know, so look, they're just going to have to. I don't know what they're going to do, Graham Moore. They're just going to have to stick at it and keep batting away. But I don't think, from my perspective, I think Cruppen will just be happy to get over the line, Sean, and into the draw this evening. And but they're going to need to improve on that. You know, we can say the weather and we say whatever, but for me, 110 is not going to cut any ice. Especially when we get down into letter grounds and stuff like that, and when the quarterfinals and semi-finals really heat up.
Yeah, and the quarterfinals are next weekend, Johnny. So we don't know the draw yet, obviously, so we'll not look too far ahead in terms of that. But the junior championship then, Johnny, as I said, I was in Camley yesterday watching Redmond O'Hanlon's and Thomas Davis, and probably the first half was not great, to be honest. O'Hanlon's were just ahead. I think it was 3 to 5 points at half time, but the second half really improved. Both teams it was nip and tuck. Both teams enjoyed a period on top. Darren McNulty sort of commended in the second half and kicked a couple of important frees. And Adam Canavan, 2-pointer near the end, put O'Hanlon's ahead. Then Thomas Davis come down the other end, and Ryan Courtney kicked a 2-pointer to put them ahead as well. So it was nip and tuck, and probably, if I'm being honest, a draw would have been a fair result. The goal that Redmond Hollins got in the first half, Ryan Cookson, who was really good, he got a superb goal in the first half, and that sort of kept them ahead, kept their noses ahead. But obviously, Crinchco come back at them, and with the thing levelled with a couple of minutes, inside injury time, both sides had chances. But the chance to win the game fell to Adam Lahern, and it was a handy enough free. He would admit himself, I'm sure it was in front of the goals. He couldn't have missed it, but it was probably harsh on O'Hanlon's, as I say. The draw was probably the fair result, but it's Thomas Davis who go through, and a massive win for them, Johnny. It was going to be huge whoever come out of this to get into the semi-finals. So a huge win for Thomas Davis, and they're into the last four now.
Yeah, it's massive win, and they've dusted themselves down well. After their performance against us in the last round of the group stages, both teams that day, whoever would have won that would have went straight into the quarters, and they've dusted themselves down well, and they've put the bit between their teeth, and they've come out on top, and now they've put themselves into the hat again for into a semi-final. They would have been ripping anybody's hand off, but look, it has to be probably said as well. Like, Jordan King missed a couple of games for them. He played a soccer game yesterday, and then went on ahead to this game, and he registered 3 points, which is damn good showing for Jordan, in fairness to him. Loughran's been consistent, same as McNulty. The two of them had 6 points apiece on the day, and look, it wasn't a game for the ages. There's no point in saying. Both teams missed a lot of chances. Both teams went large periods without scoring, like 16-15, and it sort of was getting to the stage, Sean, near the end, like as there was a right bit of injury time played in it, and look, but both teams nearly didn't want to win it or didn't know how to win it, or that sort of way. But probably that's probably a bit harsh on them, but afraid to go how to win the game, because there was so much at stake, and a place in the semi-final was massive for both of them clubs. Massive, especially for O'Hanlon's as having had a serious campaign on top of the group and in a group of death, so they had a serious championship campaign, and they should be very proud of themselves, and even to come to win a kick of the ball there, and as you said there, could easily won it on another day as well, so they'll be unlucky they're not in a semi-final. But I suppose from where Crinchgo's come from, after taking a bit of a hiding by us in the last game, to rally themselves and get a couple of key players back, and get themselves in the semi-final, and they'll fear nobody. It's one thing about them; they've always been the same. I remember they were major underdogs, going to play across a good few years ago now in the Bridge, in the semi-final as well, and they turned us over, and it was this time of year as well into Freshers Week, and we lost a couple of players that week. Was on Freshers Week and come back, and they thought it was going to be a handy game, and they found out the hard way, and they're in the semi-final, Sean, and that's it. But it still wasn't a game for the ages. But like I said, Adam Loughran is going to be key, and Jordan King is going to be key if they're going to have a serious rally in the semi-final. And look, you probably have to feel for McNulty, to be honest. He's had a top class year. He's been a real stalwart. He totally shot the lights out in the championship. He's way ahead of everybody else there, so he can be very proud of himself on his performance. And even yesterday, like, registering 6 points, it's 6 points in any day, especially in conditions, and what we had yesterday is good kicking. So look, they're doing well this year, but like I said, Crinchgo's going to be in the hat, and they'll take beating.
Johnny, just before we wrap up in part one, I know the Junior B Championship final took place on Friday night, and it was the Harps who won this against the Clan Gale, and it come down to a last-minute two-pointer from Conor McCann, the Harps goalkeeper. He was outside the 45. It was a huge kick, Johnny. I know he was on the McCrory Cup panel last year. He saved a penalty or two in the shootout against ABCBS in the McCrory Cup in the athletic ground, so he's used to dealing with pressure, I suppose. But for a young fella to come up to kick this two-pointer to win a championship final is some going, and it was a huge kick, and fair play to him, he landed it.
Yeah, especially, and that's, to be honest, that's what you want to see in a Junior B final, is a young fella like that that's coming through the stages, that's coming through the underage. He's getting to play then with obviously his second team and the seniors, and some of them teams have B teams as well, So it is refreshing to see a young fella like that getting a start, getting game time, and then, as you said, having the stones to kick a two-pointer from distance to win the game for them, and people can say what they want. Okay, it's only Junior B and blah blah whatever, but at the end of the day, it was still Harps playing Clonagale, and there's neither of them teams are just going to turn up there for the crack, So listen, it's a wee bit of bragging rights, and probably the way the both of them is performing all year, it could be the highlight of their dinner dance. But we'll wee bit tongue in cheek there. But yeah, we'll see. Obviously, we'll see how Harps get on later on, and tell you that young fella mightn't have done himself any harm, and he could find himself between the sticks for the senior team very, very soon. And it'd be interesting to see if he's tugged out tonight. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing that now, to be honest with you. But well done to the Harps. It's been fresh enough, this Junior B, and hasn't been too old. So obviously a few more teams have threw their ring in the hat in Silverbridge and Clonagale and Harps and Madden as a team in there as well. And, you know, it is refreshing and everybody's getting football and you know, especially guys at some teams in carrying panel, Sean, as you know yourself, you know, 50 guys, like, you know, you have so many guys not going to get football and stuff like that. So I think it's refreshing. I think Armagh has run it well, and to be honest with you, I've been impressed with the championships, whether that be from the whole way from junior B up to senior. I think the championship has been very, very good this year, and it's been refreshing.
Yeah, I agree with that. All that, Johnny. So we obviously have 4 more games today, so we'll discuss them in part 2. So we'll be back shortly with all the Sunday games. So part 2 of the Sideline Eye podcast, we're looking back at Sunday's action, but just a quick mention of the Senior Championship quarter-finals. We're here in the Box at Athletic Grounds. We're only after seeing the draw performed live by Armagh TV. So, Johnny, I know you were on Armagh TV, you were discussing the draw, but I'll just get a quick reaction from you too. So we have Mahary against Madden, Cullyhanna against St Peters, Cross against Carrickcruppen, and Cleve against Clonairon. So a couple of huge games to look forward to there.
Yeah, look at two of the ones that you have massive favourite tags, and there's no point. That's no disrespect to the other two teams, but Cross v Cruppen, the team that's not long up, and Cross, you know, the kingpins of the Armagh Championship for a lot of years. So Cross and Cruppen, and then you have Cullyhanna against the Peters, and the Peters going to really need to find top form there, you'd imagine. Albeit Cullyhanna was struggled to get going in a game against Mullaban over there. Probably took them a while just without Pierce Casey, but they found their feet well and kicked on well in the second half. So, you know, they're going to need to be on it, but the other two games are massive games. Probably the game of the draw is what you'd imagine could be the last game, and imagine it'll be Clonairon and Cleve. Absolutely going to be a clinker, and the other one's not soft either with Mahary and Madden. After Madden's very impressive performance here in the main game here the weekend over their neighbours Harps was very, very convincing. 0-25 the registered, and a massive spree of scores. The whole half-back line scored and all the forward line. So a job well done across the board.
Yeah, and we're here. We're only after seeing that Madden and Harps game. Me and you were live on Armagh TV for it, Johnny. Not 25-18. A landslide victory for Madden that we didn't see coming. The turning point was the scoring spree that went on. Hit 14 points in a row. Half-time break was the only thing that stopped them from scoring. So a massive performance from Madden, and something that they're going to carry through that momentum next week.
Absolutely, and probably after about 15, I think it's down. They didn't score from the 17th minute. They only registered 3 points in the rest of the game, and one of them scores came actually in injury time. So 2 points really in you know, to the 60th minute. You know, this level, it's nowhere near good enough. And after that period of time, Madden sorted out the midfield. They sorted out the battles. They left the one-on-ones. They put the hand one up in the air at different stages, and they pulled a lot of men into the full forward line, and they look for pace. They look for Joe Sheridan. They look for Darren McMullen. They look for them one-on-ones. Even Niall Grimley, the second half, got a one-on-one, slotted in, massive 2-pointer, unbelievable score, you know. And there was these guys were popping up all over the place with a bit of pace. Pulled on a couple of subs as well, a bit of pace. Aaron McKenna was slow to get into the game. The way the game was panning out, we're seeing him come alive the second half on one-on-one scenarios. Kicked a couple of points as well, and like I said, the whole half-back line all scored 2 points apiece. So they're very good at, you know, getting the balance, Sean, you know. So I don't think they can take anything more out of the game. That they went about their business the right way. They're going to have a lot of confidence coming into this, into the next round, into the quarter-final now next week. But they're going to need it.
Yeah, and we often talk about Conor Grimley because he's the main man up front for Madden. He got an all-star last year for scoring exploits. He only scored 4 points, and any day a corner forward scored 4 points, I'm saying only.
Yeah, yeah.
Not much coming from me saying only, but he got 4 points. Madden registered 21 points outside of his tally, so huge encouragement in that respect that, you know, they're not relying on Conor Grimley. Yes, he's a fantastic forward, but Madden not relying on him.
Yeah, and look, I would talk to Conor on a regular basis. I'd be friendly with Conor. You know, top class barber does the hair, you know. So
nice wee plug there.
Yeah, nice wee plug. Absolutely. I'll still have to buy it the next day, but anyway, look at and it's something that he said. He says we need a good variation of scores right across the board. and he's dead right. You know, I said before the game, as I could keep him to 7 points, you know, Harps might have a chance. They kept him to 4 points and they had no chance. You know, that goes to show. But in fairness to Connor, the amount of guys he played in reverse passes, that we think he fist passed over because he knew he was going to get a lot of contact, maybe 2 men coming on him. And to be fair, I thought the full-back, Sean Ferry, yeah. I thought he was excellent on him. I thought he'd done as good his job as what he could do, keeping him to 4 points. But like I said, it was then we reverse passes, the smart pass over the top, and he caught Harps out 3 or 4 times with that, and Ferry couldn't do anything about it because he, like at the end of the day, when you're coming on the loop, especially where the game's played now, and ball pivoting back to the middle, he is going to get on ball. But it's what you do with him after that. But it's intelligent play, everything, you know, and as this championship goes on, you're going to see him coming in like that, and you're going to see him maybe the next day coming away with 8 and 9 points, you know, and that's. But they will still need these other guys to chip in. And in fairness to Harps, in the first 15 minutes has to be said as well, Harps hit them hard, you know, and in the last few years, and I said this to Connor, that you would have questioned their personality, you would have questioned had enough steel whenever that came at them. They did today and they kicked on, you know, so hopefully it's a good learning curve for them.
And we had Cleavey and Mullabon earlier here. Johnny Cleavey coming through with 10 points to spur 122 to 112. Again, probably not as big a winning margin as a lot of people would have expected. Bigger than a lot of people would have expected. Yeah. But Cleavey, really sharp up front. Fergal Boylan, Aaron McGuinness, chipping, I think they've got 110 between them. And I know we were talking earlier on about their subs bench. The likes of Ronan McGuinness, Micheál McNamee, Nell McGuinness coming on would have been their key men in the forward line. Yeah. Now it just shows the depth that they have in that attack.
To have, and like you just mentioned there, the likes of Boylan there, he came on as a sub there a couple of weeks ago, and then next thing he's starting here, and he's a top scorer of 1-6, you know, and they're another team where they're constantly getting scores from all over the place. They're coming into this quarter final, albeit a massive draw, but they're coming in with a lot of confidence. Steve McDonald has done an awful lot right. You know, even, I'll tell you what I liked about it was the ruthlessness. I was very, very close to their dugout here, watching that game, particularly for the second half. And they were well in front, and he was still keeping the boys up to the work, all times. You know, and that ruthless streak was there, and you seen them register points and points and points right up to the end of the game. You know, there was that bit of hunger, as you said. The guys come off the bench, they want to play. They want to be playing in the quarter final. It's a tasty draw. You know, they're league champions. It's massive, but they have a massive game, and they're going to need to be firing on all cylinders in this game. It's going to be a massive tie next weekend. Really looking forward to it. But like I said, they're going to need to be on it. O'Hanlon's going to need to be on it. You know, Boylan's going to need to be on it. The McGuinnesses, and whoever starts, albeit whichever the McGuinnesses starts, you know, because they can't all start. Yeah. You know, and that's it. But whoever is, and whoever the reinforcements he comes in for when the game gets into the melting pot, which we hope it does, and the viewers at home, for any neutral wants it to be in the melting pot with 10 minutes to go. But that juggernaut's going to take some stopping for me. And Cleavey is not going to be fit to get away with too many mistakes.
Just on mistakes, it was impressive, Cleavey. The first 10 shots, 10 points today, yeah. Johnny, before they registered a wide. Like, that's incredible shooting, and it put Mullabon to the sword straight away. Because Mullabon started well, they got a goal. Joe McCann was actually really impressive today. Finished with, he maybe got 1-2 or 1-3.
You think you go 1-5?
1-5. Yeah. He was really good for Mullabon. He got a goal early on. But Cleavey, when you're not missing them chances, 10 shots, 10 points at some start of a game.
Yeah, well, look, it was a convincing win. Now, a couple of aspects of that game I'd be worried about, you know, and there's no disrespect to McCann, but you know, when he's registering something like that there, you know, you're going to need to be closing down the legs of Turbo, and these guys, you're going to need to be on it, you know, and the defence is going to have to be really sorted out the work, the matchups. If they're going to go for a zonal defence or they're going to go man to man, it's going to be key. And Stevie, it's a conundrum that he's going to have to work out, or does he just deploy the sweeper in there? You know, the tactics of this game is going to be key as well. You know, the county men has really come to the fore. You see McCambridge get up the field and slot in a goal. He'll be dangerous for one again, as he always does. We see it with Armagh as well. So, but Turbo's going to be the key man for them. Can you go damage limitation on him? And the exact same as what we said previously about Conor Grimley, and keep him to a minimum as best he can. Like, you know, and this is the way I call it. You know, from a coach's end of things or a player, like, you want to be saying, right, keep that man under 7 points.
Yeah, that's the way it's going to have to be for Cleveland.
Yeah.
Moving on to the junior then, with a double header in Abbey Park today. Clonmore against St Michael's. Clonmore come out victorious. They're obviously one of the favourites for the championship. St Michael's pushed them all the way, Johnny, and it was incredible. We spoke on our show during the week about what a tough week St Michael's had going into this game. Obviously, their chairman passing away, but massive credit has to go to Newtown for the performance they put in after everything they went through this week.
Absolutely, and you're probably seeing a massive performance out of them against the championship favourites. It has to be said, you know, when Clonmore has just absolutely steamrolled Everton they've met so far. And as you said there, for the week that was in it and Everton had to go through, you know, it was a massive performance to put in. They weren't a million miles away from it. You know, the game was tight for large parts, and they just sort of pushed on probably the last 10 or 15 minutes. You'd imagine just a wee bit of fitness and stuff like that, and using the bench, you know, just, you know, was a know-how, a team that come down from intermediate last year and sort of know what it would be like. Now, look, it has to be said, because they're in a position as well where they won convincingly in their game so far. They hadn't been tested, you know. On large parts of this game, they were tested. They were hit hard, you know, and it was really took to them in bad conditions and a ferocious day, it has to be said. But look, they came out on top. They went a bit of their business the right way. They're still the favourites in my eyes. Even when we talk about the rest of the results, and obviously with our game still to come. So, look, at Clonmore's going to be happy enough.
And Portmore, they just got past Ballyhagan. We expected this to be a really tight game. Johnny, it went right down to the wire. 1 point the difference in the end, not 11 to 1-7. Mark Hughes' goal for Ballyhagan got them in front. They started really well, but Portmore got back into it. I think it was level at half time. And 1 point the difference, that's just comes down to fine margins in championship games like that, Johnny.
This game was always going to go to the wire. Probably look at the Ballyhagan management are going to be disappointed with their forward performance, you know. But again, the conditions, you know, didn't really lend itself to, you know. And we seen McHugh's goal as well. It looked like a shot to me from out the field. Managed to drop short, and he was on it and slotted it home well. But you know, it was when you take that goal out of it, do you know what I mean? Like, it's still not registering a lot of scores there, you know, and that'll be the concern I would have. And even for Portmore, they're going to need to improve. You know, they're another team that was touted at the start of this as being one of the key teams to win the junior, and they still are, but they're going to need to improve in that performance. You know, I think for me, both teams actually worried about each other far too much, and before the game actually broke out, you know, and then it just came down to a simple effort then that decided the two, you know, but like, I think McCormick didn't even register a score.
Yeah,
you know,
I don't think he scored.
Yeah, didn't score, and that was massive to be fit to do that there, which means they got a large part of it right, you know. But for me, it's a bit like the jigsaw, you know. And if Portmore, to be honest with you, if they do perform again like that, if they come up again at Clonmore, you know, in Middletown ourselves, you know, probably they're the biggest ones that's left in it, and that's no disrespect. They're going to need to do a lot better than that. They're going to need the shooting has to go up, even in these conditions and different things. You'd imagine, Sean, it has to be 15 points or more.
Yeah, there's a lot of football still to be played. There's one more junior championship quarter-final to be played. That's Cross and Middletown on Thursday night, so the draw for the semi-finals is going to take place after that game. There's intermediate and senior quarter-finals next weekend, so we'll be looking forward to them on Thursday's podcast. Thanks everybody for tuning into today's show. Thanks to Johnny for coming on board twice for part 1 and part 2. Thanks for Sean behind the camera here in the Box Athletic Grounds, and thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll chat to everybody on Thursday.